Look Outreach is underwritten by the generous support of Munter Enterprises. Family owned and operated since 1972, integrity is important, as our family name is on every project. Our word is our bond. Munter Enterprises. Just build it.
Welcome back, everyone. Well, I'm sure I don't have to tell you that we don't exactly live in a perfect world, do we? A lot of conflicts as you go through life, a lot of things you experience. Probably one of the more painful things is, what do? You got married, you fell in love, you got married, you realize it's not working. You have to get a divorce. Usually when you set that up, you think of the movie War of the Roses, right? The divorce is set up through lawyers to be conflict. This lawyer represents this party, this lawyer represents this party, and before you know it, bang. And that's about the last thing you really want for an emotional state that you're in that really needs somebody with empathy, somebody to explain the process to you and give you a practical, quick solution. Well, that's what my guest does. This is Bill McCoskery. McCoskery.
You got it.
I got it. As Bill confessed, one of the last names that gets mispronounced quite a few times. And Bill owns the Divorce Mediation Center based in Glens Falls. So first, welcome, Bill. Very nice to have you here. I asked you to come in because I get a lot of emails. I get a lot of calls from our viewers. It's not infrequent that someone will call up with a problem that they've got in their family or something like that. The way I said this coming in, you tend to think of divorce as a conflict. And you're there to present an alternative. And I'm sure there's a big misunderstanding about what the word mediation means. So why don't we start there? Why don't you explain to me, a couple wants to get divorced. What are their options?
Well, most people think when they're going to get divorced that they need to call an attorney.
Yes.
And for some people, that is the only solution. But for 90% of the cases, if people just meet with a mediator, they can work out all the issues that they need to work out and end up getting divorced and save themselves a whole bunch of time. It's much less stressful, and it's much less expensive as well.
You know, one of the things that would confuse me initially is you hear the word mediation, you think marriage counseling. That's not it. You're actually talking about a couple that has made the decision that they would like to get a divorce, they need to get a divorce, and they need someone to mediate that process. You said something to me before the interview stuck in my mind that, you can make it as big and expensive as you want, but there are basically four things that it boils down to. What are those four things?
Well, really, in order to get divorced, you need to divide your assets, divide your debts. If there's children, you have to decide how they're going to be taken care of. And they used to call it alimony, but it's called maintenance now. If the statute calls for it, you have to decide how much and for how long. It's really four questions, whether you go with attorneys or not.
Now, it can be a lot more complicated as you dig into each one of those. A lot of conflict can arise, but it doesn't have to be.
No, as I said, in 90% of the cases, the results that you'll get from going to mediation will be the same as the results you would have gotten if you had hired attorneys.
One of the other obvious questions that I had up front was, all right, well, is it legal? Do you just do this and then you have to go to court? So what is a process there to satisfy either the Bar Association or New York State law?
Well, mediation is accepted by both, the Bar Association and New York State. You don't have to go to court. You arrange to have a separation agreement drawn up when you're done with mediation. I arrange for that for people, or people can arrange that on their own. And you do a divorce filing with the separation agreement. Essentially, what the court looks at is, instead of having to have attorneys come up and argue the case in front of the court, you present them with this document that says, we already answered the four questions. And if the court feels that the answers are okay, that's it.
I want to move to the question of children. I'm sure many of you can relate to this. I have friends that went through a divorce. It was devastating on the children because all they saw was the fighting. All they saw was mommy is over here, daddy is over here. That will stay with a child for their whole life. This sounds to me to be a lot less stressful.
It's proven to be less stressful for children. It's proven that children themselves have less trouble throughout the rest of their life
Yes.
if they haven't experienced a litigated divorce. And they've done studies and have proven it over and over again because with attorneys, and I know a lot of attorneys, in many cases there's a need for attorneys.
Yes.
But an attorney has to try to get you the best deal. So if your attorney is trying to get you the best deal and my attorney is trying to get me the best deal, there's going to be conflict.
Yes, right.
Whereas in mediation, both people just try to agree to come up with what's fair. So nobody thinks they won and nobody thinks they lost.
Well, you know what? I think you probably heard this phrase. In a successful negotiation, everyone walks away a little unhappy.
Right.
You know
right,
what I mean?
Exactly.
And that's the nature of a good negotiation. And when you think about divorce, I don't think there's a negotiation more personal than that, right? You said a phrase to me before, it stuck in my mind. Get to tomorrow.
Right.
Boy, is there a lot in that.
There is a lot in that. I've been divorced myself, and when that decision is arrived at with a couple, you go to this place I call, it's the uncomfortable place where you're under stress, you're unhappy, and I try to tell people that mediation is to get to the next day. After that, get to tomorrow, and then you can start living the rest of your life. And sadly, and again, sometimes attorneys are needed, but when you work with attorneys, that place that you're in becomes longer. A mediated divorce, if both people are agreeable, can be done in 2 months, whereas a litigated divorce can take 1.5 to 3 years, and that's the length of time that you're in that unhappy place, and it's terrible.
You know, when you come down to it, there are legalities involved with almost everything we do, but the emotional dynamic of something like this makes so much sense when you think about it. And again, it's not counseling. That's what initially was my thought. The thought here is that here's a professional who can actually sit with you and say, okay, we basically have 4 things that we need to cover. And if children are involved, let's make this a less stressful situation so that we can get through this and we can get to tomorrow. Exactly. So I encourage anybody out there who's listening to this, we don't live in a perfect world. There are ups and downs throughout our whole life. Seek Bill out. Check out what mediation means. And as he said, 90% of the time, this is a very, very viable solution for all the parties. Great, Bill. Very nice to have you here, and thank you for coming in and explaining this to us.
Could I give people my website real quick?
Yes, you sure can. Go.
It's the Divorce Mediation Center of Glens Falls, so dmcgf.com.
Okay, dmcgf.com. dmcgf.com. Terrific, Bill. Great. Pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you, too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To see this interview again, you can head to our website, looktvonline.com.